often when we talk with a policymaker, we get 10 minutes. That might be the max. And as soon as we're done with our 10 minutes, they're moving on to talk to somebody else about something that's 180 degrees from what they just finished talking to us about. And then 10 minutes after that, they got another 90-degree turn. And then 10 minutes after that, another 180-degree turn. So they're spending all day with these snippets of information across all of these topics. And so how do we make sure at the end of that 10 minutes, our most critical take-home message for them is conveyed? And most of the time, that's start with that. It's not how we write science, right? If you think about how we communicate our science, our traditional presentation that we take, we start with an introduction. All right, let's talk about the problem and introduce it. And that's fine in that forum, but we don't have that luxury when you're talking to even to a CEO.
Welcome to Swine Canada, brought to you by Wise Genetics. I'm Aline Remus, dedicated to bring you the latest insights and discussions in the swine industry. Get ready to expand your knowledge and stay ahead of today's episode. So, yes, you do not need to adjust your settings. There is someone with a funny accent and is your new host of Swine Canada. I'm Aline Remus. And in today's episode, I'm very lucky to have here someone that I admire a lot. And she is very patient with me because today things are not going well. And still she is here being super nice as usual. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Crystal Levesque.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Crystal, I will ask you to tell us a little bit how has been your history, your background, how you got to swine industry. And please tell us, I know that you have a fantastic history background.
My path to where I am is not linear. Many know right out of high school, or at least out of university, what they want to do. I did not. I thought I did when I went to university right out of high school, and that was not where I wanted to be. Sometimes I blame my husband for that. I met him while I was there. Other times I have to take credit and say, no, it was me that really didn't want to be there. So I left, got married. We had 3 children, and I was a mom, and that was great. And when the kids went back to school, when the kids all got to school, then I decided, okay, now it's time that I can do something else. Now I need to think about a career. But it was a career that I thought needed to be Monday to Friday, basically 8 to 5, so that I could manage kids and work and all the other things that we were doing. So my plan was to be a vet tech. That did not come about. I actually didn't qualify for the program. And so I headed to university to be a physiotherapist. And I met, I got into the College of Ag. I was late getting my application in, and I had a meeting with Phil Thacker, who many of you will know. And we can suffice it to say he was not impressed by my first attempt at university the many years previously. But since I'd passed biology, he told me that I could take a particular course, which happened to be his monogastric nutrition course. That course literally changed the course of my life. He's a fabulous instructor. He was a fabulous instructor. And the way he made connections between human nutrition and swine nutrition, and even poultry for that matter, I had no idea of this fascinating area of research, that someone could have a career studying these things. It was absolutely fascinating to me. And so before I finished that class in my very first year of college, I knew I would have a PhD. I knew I would have a job at some university somewhere doing something. And so it wasn't a straight path. I did go straight into my master's. I worked with John patients, and then took a hiatus. Our kids were the recommendation was for me to go study somewhere else, which makes sense. I was very in tune with what was going on there, but it's good to experience life somewhere else. And our kids were in the upper ages of high school, and it didn't make sense for us to do that. So I took a short hiatus, about 4.5 to almost 5 years. I bought a restaurant and I managed that restaurant. So I make a pretty mean butter tart, actually, still, even after all these years. Yeah. And then when the youngest one was starting grade 12, I decided, okay, now it's time. And I commuted every weekend back and forth to Edmonton and did my PhD in Edmonton with Ron Ball. And then by the time I finished that, then we were moving on to, kids were all out of school and on their own. So then we headed up to Guelph and I did a postdoc there. And then we came to SDSU. But in there, the one, Ron gave me a hard time. The one goal that I had, one of the goals that I had while during my PhD was I needed to defend my PhD before I became a grandma. And I missed it by 2 months. Oh. The firstborn granddaughter was in June and I defended in August. But it's been great. It gives me, a little different perspective on things. I pay a lot to keep the gray out of my hair, but it's been fun. It's been a good journey, and it's been fun sharing those kinds of things with students to say, it's okay to change, right? If it's not working, then it's okay to change, and open your eyes to opportunities that you didn't know existed, right? I mean, we all had most of the time, and most of the students I see coming through the university, okay, well, I'm here because this is what I think I want to do. And that's great. And maybe that's where you will always end up. But don't be afraid to try something new just for the sake of trying something. You never know. Had I not taken Dr. Thacker's monogastric nutrition course, maybe I would be a physiotherapist. I don't know. But I tell you, it was right now, I think it was the best thing that I ever did.
Yeah, I think we all have Dr. Thacker to thank for bringing you in and making you to discover the love for swine. Because as I learned before, in your dad's farm, you had everything. You have broiler, you have beef, you had agriculture, but the only thing you didn't have was pig production, was not swine production. So it's quite amazing that you end up here.
Yeah. So we are back. I have gone back to doing broiler work, broilers and turkeys. So my dad has passed quite a number of years ago, but he'd be happy that I at least came back to doing the broilers. He loved his broilers.
It's a great example of things don't need to be linear, and you don't need to be so sure about everything all the time, right? It's okay to try different things and learn different things. And extremely competent professionals like you, they can go back and forth. They don't need to have that perfect career. Sometimes it's amazing that you say, I have hiatus in my CV, because I struggle, like many, especially many women that I know, they struggle to say, how am I going to explain that I took a 3 years maternity leave, to have quote unquote, this luxury. And I think that's amazing. We forget that especially many women in science, they're doing an amazing job for society, like you raising your kids and being with your grandkids. That's also an amazing thing. And it seems that you have been lucky to have great mentors in your past. And I know that you are also a great mentor, and now you have been involved developing a great program in training scientists to translate science. Could you tell us a little bit about this, how we can make science more accessible to everybody, from the producer to the CEO of the companies, as you have mentioned?
Yeah, so that training program started about 5 years ago. It was a joint venture between following up on a higher education challenge grant from the USDA that we got. And we partnered with University of Minnesota, Lee Johnson, University of Nebraska, Lincoln with Phil Miller, and North Dakota State University with Casey Carlin. And So that program took a few iterations for the first few years, but the spot where we landed on was the program that we've now operated for heavily for the last 4 years. And that is, it starts with a series of online seminars. So over the course of the spring and summer, they're interactive seminars. So it's not just a recording that the students listen to. The students come on and we do various different interactive activities with them. But we spend time talking to individuals who have either lived their career in that line of communication or have trained specifically in communicating with those target audiences. So, for example, we'll bring in a journalist and talk to that journalist about what information do you need from us, as we want to try to engage you and communicate with you, because journalists are very important in sharing our message, right? And so what do we do? What do you need from us? And how do we package it in a way that makes it easy for you to then share when you're talking to your different audiences? What information do you need from us? Same thing with a policymaker. Often when we talk with a policymaker, we get 10 minutes. That might be the max. And as soon as we're done with our 10 minutes, they're moving on to talk to somebody else about something that's 180 degrees from what they just finished talking to us about. And then 10 minutes after that, they got another 90-degree turn. And then 10 minutes after that, another 180-degree turn. So they're spending all day with these snippets of information across all of these topics. And so how do we make sure at the end of that 10 minutes, our most critical take-home message for them is conveyed? And most of the time, that's start with that. It's not how we write science, right? If you think about how we communicate our science, our traditional presentation that we take, we start with an introduction. All right, let's talk about the problem and introduce it. And that's fine in that forum, but we don't have that luxury when you're talking to even to a CEO. You've got 10 minutes of their time, and then they need to move on to some major crisis within the company potentially. So start with, what do you want from the policymaker? When this 10 minutes is over, how do you want that policy changed? Or what decision do you want them to make when that other policy is coming down? Start with that. They'll ask you for the rest of the information if you need it. And so we spend the spring and summer talking to these different audiences, understanding what do they need from us and how do we tailor our message so that they walk away feeling heard and with something that they can use. Then we bring the students together for an in-person conference in the fall. And there the students know in advance who they're going to talk to. And so we assign them an alternative target audience. So we bring in CEOs of companies, and some of the students are assigned the CEO room. We bring in different people who have worked in government. And so we put them in the policymaker room. And so the students get an opportunity to actually tailor a message, whatever that message is that they want to share about their science, and tailor it to those audiences. Once they're done sharing their presentation, then those target audiences role play like this was real. Like I'm really sitting in front of a group of journalists trying to give them a message I want them to convey. And so then they spend 10 minutes grilling back the student. What am I supposed to do with that information? I'm, as a CEO of the company, you didn't tell me how much it costs. How much does it cost? How do I distribute this thing? And so they get 10 minutes in a bit of a hot seat. And then they get another 10 minutes to say, okay, look, here's why we kept asking you about this question. Here's why I didn't let go of how much does it cost or what's the distribution channels. Because I can't use it, or I don't know how to get a return on my investment if I don't know what I can sell it for. And so then they get a chance to really learn, why are those things so important for those audiences? And so then they get direct feedback from people living in those spaces. So it's been a great program. The students, well, on both sides, students and industry. For the industry people that come and participate, we make sure they understand that the focus there are the students, right? And so it's a different kind of a networking experience than at a conference. So I certainly at conferences, and your students are doing the same. They're encouraged to go and introduce themselves to someone from industry and talk and try to network. But we have to be in fairness to those industry people that we're trying to connect with. They also have agendas at those meetings. They also have individuals that they want to go and meet with, and customers that they maybe want to try and catch, right? So their attention is divided. Certainly, my students have always had positive feedback, or been able to interact with individuals at conferences. But bottom line is their attention is divided. That's not true at this meeting. At this meeting, everybody's attention is focused on the students and helping them learn how to communicate. And so it's a very different experience on both sides. But it's been great. It's been a very good program. And so, yeah.
It really sounds amazing, because I don't think is something that we're trained a lot, especially when you arrive at the end of your PhD. You have been there. I think oftentimes we feel very prepared about the science, but we are not really sure how to translate that, how to communicate, or even how to use that in real life skills, right? I in my PhD, I did a program where they're like translating what the skills we learn in the PhD actually mean, working in STEAM and so on. But I think something that we really lack is the course that we're doing. How can we be effective? We don't know how to be effective, and that's great. And you have mentioned that part of this course is online, and then it has a part that's presential, and it can be people from other universities and other places can enroll. And I think you'll share with us the link so we can add here so that people can know more about your course.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can share that with you. We've got a great website that the young lady that helps us keep things keeps the train on the track has done a wonderful job at that website. But yes, last year's conference, we had, I think 11 or 13 different university students from different agriculture universities represented at the conference. And this year, actually, I just sent it up to a couple of colleagues in Canada. So we'll maybe even get some Canadian students that are able to come down. So our biggest challenge is because the program before was run on a USDA grant. That grant is now ended. And so our challenge, or our goal going forward, is to make sure that we can maintain support to keep the program going and provide students some support to get there, right? And so this is an extra thing that they do on top of everything else. And so I can honestly say we, over the course of the 5 years, and we've had about 120 students go through the program. I think you'd be hard pressed to find any one of those students who didn't put the hours in advance that was needed for them to do well in the program. And so we want to sort of help them and promote that by having industry support us and support the program to get students there and attending in person.
You have commented that you receive not only people from the industry, but you also receive high school. Do you receive producers? Do you also receive lay people in general? Have you ever have activists coming? Because in another podcast, I hear you telling that with everyone, we can find a point in common. Even with activists, that is, I think, is something that we scientists, we in animal science especially, we struggle a lot, how to make that link and how to make that conversation productive. Because I think the reality is, in the other side, there is another human being that is probably just lacking another point of view. And if we can have a productive conversation, if we can actually pass that message in a polite manner with arguments, with science, I think we can do much more good to our cause than actually hiding or, as was in podcast, like screaming or having a blown out conversation, right? So can you share a bit with us?
Yeah. So, I was talking about the high school students. So one of the target audiences that we had last year was high school students. So we brought a group of high school students in to listen to the presentation. The students were then tasked with, imagine you were, I mean, this is really not that much different than going into a grocery store, right? So imagine you're going into a high school class. Why do they care about the genomic, or the transcriptomics of, I don't know, cattle ear or something to predict health? Why would they care? Well, take it. They do, and they can, if you explain why it can be important to them. But yeah, there's usually some point of contact or some point of commonality between us and anybody else that we meet, where sometimes we can simply agree, might come down to simply agreeing we all like to eat. And the bottom line is we want the best. When we're talking about animal products, we want the best for the animals that we're using as a food source. And sometimes it's as simple as that. That's as close as we can come to agreeing on something. But at the end of the day, we can agree, right? In our house, we all drive Chevys because it's the law. Others drive other things. And so we can all agree we want a really good car. Doesn't have to be the same one.
Yeah, I think that's a great point of bringing everyone to a common point. As you said, in the end, we all want what is the best for the animals. I think we have different points of view of what that looks like, but learning how to communicate that is key. And it seems that your program offers some options on that. And talking a little bit about polemic topics, can we talk about soil nutrition? Because that is really where your research, you're a hardcore soil scientist. And I want to know, considering the current leader size, these self-feeding programs, are they so bad, really?
Yeah. So there are probably many that will have to just agree or to disagree on many of those points, I suppose. But I guess I would like to challenge the industry, and when I say our industry, I think that's the Canadian and the American industry are really so similar that we can, for the most part, call us one.
Right.
Our goals, the way we manage animals, the genetics that we're using, they're so very similar. But I guess I would like to challenge us to say, are they really that good? And I'm not saying that they're bad, right? But if we look at some of the things that we have, our litter sizes are really great, right? They're getting good, and they are good, but there are other patterns that are not so good, right? So we have, certainly in the US, we are still struggling with sow mortality, sow health. And so we have data from our farm. I have data from a commercial farm that we worked with. And actually just yesterday, we were having a meeting with another group, and they also had been collecting data from commercial farms. And one thing that has been consistent across all of them are that as sows reach parity 4 or older, we don't see a whole lot of difference in litter size. You get a little bit of change in litter size from the gilts up to maybe the parity 3s. But if you look at total born is high, and it maintains high. But what changes quite dramatically is stillborn rate. And our data shows it. The data from the commercial farm that we were looking at yesterday, the data from the commercial farm that we had been partnering with previously, stillborn rates increase on a linear fashion as sows move past parity 4 and on. That suggests to me that something's going on. Now, we don't really know whether that's we call all of these piglets stillborn. We wouldn't really know exactly when they died. Was it actually during the farrowing process? Was it 24 hours before? we don't really know. But the bottom line is something is happening, particularly with those older sows. Now, as a nutritionist, amino acids are something that I'm particularly interested in. So, that's going to be my go-to. Well, we're not phase feeding our sows properly in, say, late gestation. But there are many other nutrients, minerals, vitamins that also play important roles in overall sow health. So I don't know that I could put my thumb and say it's absolutely this. And maybe in the end, maybe it isn't the amino acid supply, maybe it's something else. But I think the bottom line is, as an industry, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a part of the swine industry, is because we see things and we see a challenge and we rise to the challenge and say, okay, we're going to fix this. And I think it's time now that we start taking a hard look. And I am the first to admit that those sow trials are hard, and we need to, as researchers, we need to partner with commercial farms. But we also have to understand that collecting data on a commercial farm, that's not easy. It isn't easy under commercial circumstances. And so sometimes we have to make decisions that end up not allowing us to answer the questions we really want to answer, because we're just limited by either the design of the space or labor or, something else that we don't necessarily have at the university level. And there's been, over the last few years, we've had a number of groups that have taken on some big topics and done some really great work in trying to understand that. I think we've got a long way to go yet. And so hopefully there's others. And there are certainly lots of other groups that are now starting to look at sow demands and nutrient demands, and that are doing a lot of really great stuff too. But I guess that would be my challenge. Are we really as good as we think we are?
So, I'm suspect here because, of course, my interest here is really variation, individual variability. I work with precision feeding, so I think the way I look to your research and research Leanne has been doing is, I think we still have so much to do. I think we are doing a great job. It's undeniable. As you say, I think the performance of these cells is amazing, but I think we can do better, not in terms of increasing litter size. I think what we're talking here is longevity. We're talking about the how robust those piglets can be, and how that sow can also have a better health status overall her life, right? And I agree with you. I think we still have a lot of work, whether it's phase feeding, improving our phase feedings, or precision feeding in these phases. But I think we still have so much to do, and I think you're doing a great work on that, and I'm very inspired by that. Little message for people that are listening to us: if you're enjoying the episode of Swine Canada, presented by Wisonetics, please remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. You can also set on the notifications to the channel, and don't miss the upcoming episodes. So please feel free to leave us comments. You can leave questions for Crystal. I'm pretty sure that talking about the feeding progress is so going to raise some questions, and maybe if you have enough questions, you send these questions to us, we're going to bring her back to discuss very specific points of it.
It's time for our famous three.
So normally in our episode, we always finish it, we're coming to the end, but we always finish with 3 questions that you probably know from the others, but I am actually very curious to know. What is your textbook or reference in swine industry, and what you recommend for the students and for professionals in general that want to learn more about swine production? So
I'm a lover of the NRC. But I mean, it's not that much of a surprise, is it? I was a postdoc with Case DeLang when they were updating the last one, the 2012 version. And I've now had the privilege of being part of the group that is updating it again, hopefully for 2026. So I mean, as a nutritionist, that's my favorite. I like that one. But
I think it's a great resource, and I think it really gives you a general view. We often, when we talk about NRC, everyone imagine tables, right? And they forget that there is much more behind it. There is a whole book of a lot of information with a whole committee that puts a lot of work on that. And also there is the model itself, right? I think that is a whole new podcast about it.
Yes.
But I do agree with you. It's also, I have a lot of books, but in the end, I always go back to the NRC.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And out of work, what is the type of books, or it's your favorite book or movie that you like and recommend?
Yeah. So, well, as a Christian, the book I go to most often is my Bible every morning. But I have started using Audible, and it's when I love to read, but I don't have a lot of time to just sit and read. So that's my way to get my butt out and exercise the way I should and supposed to be. So I've been, for the last little while, going back to all the old classics. I think I'd mentioned that in another podcast. And so I'm working right now. I just finished The Grapes of Wrath. And so I'm just going back to those. And I'm thinking, these are really good. Why didn't I pay more attention when I was younger? But yeah, so that's my
amazing
morning routine, is to start listening to the old classic books. And
in your opinion, what sets a successful professional in swine versus those that are not?
There's a lot of characteristics, as I think of different individuals, that I hold in very high esteem for their influence, certainly on my life. But a characteristic that seems to blend through them all is they're listeners, and not listeners to just for the sake of we can hear and somebody's talking, but listening to really hear. Individuals who listen to really hear, they're listening to learn something about whoever they're talking to, or learn something for themselves. So they're listening not just to hear, and they're listening to, I guess, learn. And so that influences then how they interact. It influences decisions that they make, because they're learning as they go, right? They're the individuals that come away from something, and a chance interaction with them in the grocery store, and they're learning something. They go away with some new insight simply because they listened, and that then influences everything else that they do down the way. It influences their jobs, how they approach their jobs. So yeah, I guess being a good listener to really learn to me is a really important characteristic.
Yeah, that's really resonates, because if you think it's really the individuals that never think they know everything, they're always curious to learn something new, right? So that concludes another episode of Swine Canada, presented by Wise Genetics. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Crystal, for being here with us and sharing that truly inspiring background and the work you're doing. I really appreciate your time and patience with me today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun.
And for those that are listening to us, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to stay updated and for future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback is invaluable to us. Until next time, this is Aline Remus from Swine Canada signing off.